We've been talking about having issues with God over all sorts of reasons, and this one today has to do with the word surrender. He requires us to surrender all to Him, and we're like, seriously, God, how do we do that? There's an old hymn that I remember singing as a kid that said, all to Jesus I surrender all. And I remember having a hard time singing that song because I felt like I was lying. How was I supposed to surrender to a God I couldn't see or understand? And what did that mean anyway? It sounded scary. Surrender's not really a popular word. It's usually a sign that we've lost something. At least that's how it feels. By definition, surrender means to cease resistance and submit to authority. There's that word again. And so to cease resisting God and submitting to His authority isn't a loss, it's a gain. In fact, in the Christian life, there's really no victory without surrender. In fact, the word surrender, I couldn't even find it in the Bible except with references to battles. And still, we sing that song, I Surrender All. I read the history behind that old hymn, and the writer of it said he was struggling between developing his talents as an artist or leaving everything and going full-time into teaching and evangelizing for God. When it came time to choose, he decided to surrender it all, and then he wrote the lyrics to that song. He became an evangelist or a preacher and teacher, and says he discovered talents he didn't even know he had, and God caused him to sing those lyrics. That guy, Judson W. Van Deventer, went on to write 60 more hymns, and the late Billy Graham says that Deventer was a great influence in his life, and Graham even used this same hymn of I Surrender All to close many of the meetings that he held. So why does God want us to surrender it all, and what does that even mean? Back in Matthew 16 again, he's talking to his followers, and remember he told them they would suffer many things, they would be killed, he will be killed, but he will be raised on the third day. One of his followers, Peter, takes Jesus aside and says, stop, these things cannot happen. And Jesus strongly pushes Peter aside and says he's a stumbling block, and that Peter only had human concerns and not the concerns of God. Ouch. Jesus then turns back to his followers and says if they truly want to follow him, they have to deny themselves, which is to surrender their desires and wants and take up their cross and follow him. And then he says the most incredible thing ever. If they want to save their lives, they must lose them. But if they want to lose their lives, they will find them. There's this great exchange that takes place when we surrender our human concerns for God's plans for our lives. And it's not a defeating surrender, a loss, or an acknowledgement that we're a failure, but quite the opposite. I surrender all is an attitude of the heart, acknowledging that what God has planned for us is the very best and so good that it's better than any plans or actions we could have had for ourselves. That's a huge statement to make, a hard position of the heart to bend, and yet a requirement by Jesus of those that follow him. Holding on to our lives and making things happen so we can look good is a dangerous way to live, but waking up every day and surrendering our time and resources to him enables us to find our lives fulfilled and meaningful in this hard world. Jesus' words are never the same as what we're taught in culture. Culture says never surrender, never give up, stay till the end, and fight for your cause. Those are good things if that's what you're supposed to do in the moment. But surrender takes on a whole new meaning when we see it in the light of an exchange of that which brings us angst to that which ushers in peace. And that's why he requires that we lay down our lives at his feet and surrender to him, because that's the only way to experience the resurrection after death, because the same power that raised him lives in us. God doesn't ask us to surrender so that he can run around the field saying that he defeated us. Instead, he asks us to surrender so that he can then lift us up beside him to scale mountains, run through fields, and see the beauty of the world through his eyes. I surrender all. Not so scary after all, is it?